Good morning and welcome to the Institution of Structural Engineers webinar on knowledge management in a structural engineering firm. My name is Rob Paul and I will be your chair for the session today. Before we get started, I need to run through a few housekeeping notes. At any time, you're able to chat with the other attendees using the chat function at the bottom right of your screen. If you have a question you want to raise, there's an Ask a Question button at the top right of the chat box. Please raise questions at any time, and we will have some time at the end of the session to run through the questions with our speakers. If a question you were going to ask has already been raised, you're able to upvote the existing questions. Hopefully, you won't have any technical issues during today, but if you do, please either refresh your browser, use the check connection link under the video, or use the direct chat box to contact events@istruct.org for some further help. I'm now pleased to introduce our speakers for today. First up this morning, you'll be hearing from Dr. Dominique Poole-Avery. She is the Global Knowledge Manager at Arup. She'll be handing over to her colleague, Andy Gardner, the Structural Skills Network Manager at Arup. Our final speaking this morning is Ingrid Chevet. She is the CEO of Rise Structures and will be giving an insight from an SME perspective. There's more information on each of our presenters today within the speaker profiles section at the bottom of the screen. So that's enough from me for this morning, and it's with great pleasure that I will hand over to Dominique. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and thank you. I'm really pleased to be here today to spend a little time sharing my thoughts and experiences with you, specifically around creating or nurturing a knowledge culture in our organisations. So knowledge management is now considered quite a mature discipline, having been acknowledged professionally for well over 30 years. But having the right culture is absolutely key to success. So just to start with, I thought it would be useful to reflect on what a knowledge culture was. So I included a brief summary on this slide that resonates with me. A knowledge culture encourages and enables the exchange of knowledge, insights, and experience to benefit individuals and advance the organization towards its strategic goals. And that last point is really critical. So the purpose of any knowledge strategy must be underpinned by the goal of supporting the organization to meet its strategic goals. And there are many indicators that can help you recognize if you have a knowledge culture within your organization. So just to think about those in a little bit more detail, do you recognize behaviors of openness and honesty in your colleagues? It might feel obvious, but actually only by being open and honest can you be responsive or receptive to knowledge of others, to work together and co-create. And that's a behavior that you can influence in your colleagues by adopting it yourselves. Within Arup, we talk a lot about having a culture of curiosity, and that's about encouraging people to explore, to test things out, to be brave, and just not worry about not always getting it right first time. And to work together to collaborate and perhaps arrive at innovative solutions. And in doing so, learning. Now, whether that's through, learning through experience for continuous improvement or ensuring that learning is incorporated in your day-to-day working practices. So can you see the activity of knowledge sharing being actively championed and valued by your leaders? Is it celebrated and perhaps also evidenced in formal reviews? There might be measures in place by which the activity and impact of knowledge sharing or knowledge exchange is measured. I think these are all indicators of a culture that is conducive to knowledge sharing. And by establishing a knowledge sharing culture in your organization, people are more open to participate in conversations and work collaboratively. So they're not only acquiring knowledge and building capability, but generating new knowledge. And this creates an environment where people feel valued for their contributions, which also impacts broader staff engagement and ultimately staff retention. Having a culture in your organization where people are engaged in knowledge exchange means that they're more able to find the information that they need in an efficient way. And that can foster organizational agility, the ability for the organization to respond to challenges or adapt ideas with confidence. And of course, people are empowered when they have access to the right information. They have the freedom to make quick and more informed decisions. And this encourages creativity and innovation, leading to better quality outcomes and increased value in the work that we do for our clients or the communities that we serve. So next, I wanted to share a little about our approach within Arup. So we've long recognised the importance of having a vibrant knowledge culture. And for over 10 years, Arup University has driven our firm's culture of learning and curiosity, with the ultimate aim of ensuring professional and technical excellence in everything that we do. Arup University sits at the heart of Arup, and it's dedicated to expanding our knowledge, strengthening our collective capabilities, and accelerating our progress towards a sustainable future. Arup University is formed of 5 collaborative faculties: foresight, research, learning, skills, knowledge, and information. And it's supported by regional teams. So the foresight team help our business and our clients understand major trends shaping the future of the built environment. While each year Arup invests in applied research that pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible, it drives our culture of innovation and curiosity across regions and markets. And the learning teams specialize in learning solutions to upskill all our members and drive excellence. They provide a range of learning resources and opportunities to expand our collective capabilities. And another really important point is that our university hosts 58 dedicated global skills networks. So they're like, what you would recognize as communities of practice. And they bring together communities of talented and enthusiastic Arup members to share their knowledge. And skills are really critical to building and enhancing our current and future capability. And of course, our dedicated knowledge and information team shape the practices, tools, and behaviors that support our members to foster a culture of knowledge sharing in Arup. So it's really in these faculties' ability to work together that provides real value. And in doing so, we facilitate our members to have access to our collective skills, knowledge, the learning that they need to develop our capability further and help our clients tackle some of the biggest challenges that we face. And when starting to think about what I would share with you today, I was thinking about the journey of an Arup member throughout their career. And I looked to extract some key influences that help to reinforce our cultural values and the behaviors. So, not so long ago, we experienced a period of growth and realized that 50% of our firm, I think it's more than 50% of our firm, have been with Arup for 5 years or less. So, actually, mechanisms for maintaining our culture are really important. So, when new people join Arup, one of the things that they're encouraged to read, maybe even before they've joined, is the key speech. And that was written by Ove Arup in 1970. So, although, getting on for a significant age now, it's still very relevant and very true to the principles that we work to today. It sets out our core values, and they continue to be referred to in our current strategy. One of the activities that our knowledge and information faculty did was to develop both a knowledge and information induction and a knowledge and information handbook. So the induction is a learning module and the handbook is for day-to-day use, and it guides members to the best tools, systems, methods for different activities. And that could be everything from finding expertise when you're embarking on a new project or carrying out project reviews. And they're practical guides that are reinforced by case study examples that illustrate how others have benefited by using those recommended approaches. And I personally think case studies are incredibly powerful in that way. And all members are expected to join and participate in a skills network. So I've mentioned these already. These are our global communities of experts and enthusiasts sharing their knowledge and expertise. And for sustainable practices, we try and embed processes as far as we can into workflows. So people are expected to demonstrate their knowledge sharing capabilities in appraisals, through the promotion process, and also in leadership roles. And finally, we have Arup Fellows. So these are very senior people in the organisation who are recognised as demonstrating the firm's commitment to excellence. And I just want to touch on a couple of those in a bit more detail. So firstly, on skills networks. So as I said, we've got 58 global skills networks, and they are designed to cover the full breadth and depth of domain expertise and skills that we have in Arup. Andy, who you're going to hear from next, is the manager of our structural skills network. and he'll be talking to you in a bit more detail about experiences gained in that role. So they aim to create global, high-performing and highly talented communities who develop expertise to deploy in our work. So each global skills network supports our disciplines in performing to the highest professional standards and to operate flexibly, of course, and collectively to push forward the ambitions set by our strategy. They nurture creativity, innovation, and technical brilliance, and focus on collaboration and integration, working with both groups and teams to bring combined skills and knowledge together to deliver results for Arup in our work. And at Arup, we award the title of Arup Fellows to individuals with world-class technical achievements who have shown pioneering leadership in their respective fields of expertise. Dame Jo Da Silva, should I say, shown here, Global Director of Sustainable Development at Arup, leads the firm's activities to address climate, biodiversity, and equity crises. The fellowship celebrates those at the forefront of excellence at Arup. These individuals exemplify exceptional talent, technical excellence, vision, and ingenuity, not just in our firm, but also across our global industry. Our Arup Fellows are committed to passing on their knowledge to staff members by sharing experiences, inspiring others' pursuit of excellence, and encouraging innovative thinking firm-wide. They're accessible and engaged with all of our members, and they guide the firm forwards in the pursuit of excellence. They also serve as ambassadors to the firm, showcasing their depth of expertise, innovation, and integrated approach to our global industry clients and future clients. So that's a little insight into Arup, but there are lots of methods for nurturing the behaviours that facilitate good knowledge management practices. And you don't have to start with a full-blown programme, but actually focused initiatives can be just as successful in driving change. So I thought I'd share this fairly simple 3-step model that we've used and refer to. And the first step is to generate interest and excitement in the initiative through articulating the value to the business. Again, the alignment to strategic aims really plays an important part here. And then secondly, look to engage and influence at all levels of the firm, but understand their different motivations through perhaps a stakeholder mapping process, because they're all going to have different priorities, and being able to understand and address these is more likely to lead to success. And thirdly, think about how you can drive long-term behavioural change for sustainable outcomes. And on that last point, I just wanted to finish with a really good analogy that a colleague of mine at Arup, Mary Durian, another expert in knowledge management, shared with me last year, and it's something that I really love. So I think you'll have access to the slides, and within this, there's a link directly to a YouTube video. And I recommend watching it because it conveys this probably better than I'm going to attempt to do, just by talking through it. But it's called The Elephant, the Rider, and the Path. And it was developed by psychologist Jonathan Haidt. And he talked about how we have 2 systems in our brains, the emotional, which is represented by the elephant, and then the rational, which is represented by the rider. And, the rational part of our brains is obviously the part that plans and problem solves. So the rider might analyze and decide on the direction of travel, but it's really the elephant that represents the emotional system that provides the power for the journey. So the rider can try to lead or push the elephant, but if there's a disagreement between the two, then the elephant has a weight advantage. And that's the power imbalance that makes adopting behaviors really hard. So for the rider and the elephant to head in a new direction, effectively for our brains to accept and adopt change, you really need to think about the path which represents the external environment. And you're more likely to be able to complete that journey if you can shorten the distance and remove any obstacles. So if you want to lead change in your organization, there are 3 things that you need to do. So the first thing is to give direction to the rider, the knowledge of how to get to the destination. The second thing is to motivate the elephant. That's about tapping into the emotion and understanding the needs of the people. And then thirdly, shape the path to allow for easy progress. And that's how change happens. And I will stop sharing there and I'll hand over to my colleague, Andy Gardner.
So hopefully you can all see that, and welcome. So My name's Andy Gardner, as introduced. I am first and foremost a practicing structural engineer. My role as global skills manager I see as very much secondary to being a practicing structural engineer. And as Dominique introduced, while the subject of knowledge management is a field all in itself, it's something that I've learnt and picked up during my time at Arup and picking up the culture and the importance of it in carrying out a structural role. So I'm going to be talking again, very much linking to things that Dominique talked about, obviously being an Arup, but from a slightly different perspective. So when I thought about what to present, my first thing to do was to look at a definition of knowledge. And there's a couple of screenshots there from the internet, one from Wikipedia. And quite interesting, but some words that I picked out there were, it talks about facts, information, it talks about awareness, understanding and comprehension, as in that grasp. It's not just about the information being out there, but it's about people and them being able to comprehend the information. It also talks about skill. And in that sense, I think it's about being able to utilize or deploy the information. And then also a word that I picked out that grabbed my attention was acquire. And the fact that we're not obviously born with the information, and equally information on the internet or in libraries is all well and good, but people need to acquire it. And that's an active activity that takes time, takes energy, and takes a commitment. So go forwards. Then I thought about, well, why be interested in knowledge? And I thought then immediately turning to projects and the delivery of projects. Dominique talked about knowledge culture and linking to strategic goals. And to me, my way of putting that is the aspiration to deploy knowledge for the betterment of our services, to provide better designs, to deliver better projects. So there's an aspirational driver that links to the firm's or strategic goals. And so then thinking about that, people have the knowledge, they invest in their interests, their experiences, and they pursue activities or projects as the opportunities present themselves. Projects, meanwhile, normally provide the challenges and the problems that need to be overcome, and therefore the opportunities to really associate knowledge with meaningful outcomes, achieving something of purpose. So quite often there's the motivation and the drive is through projects. And then you'll see on this diagram, I've got two locations where I've put management, culture and systems. The first one associated with the equal sign is that I think it's really important that we actively seek to try and get the knowledge that's sat within projects or within people and pool it together. Because otherwise that knowledge, to me, it's not really being managed. It's just there and it's being used in its simplest form for a direct purpose. But it's only by pooling knowledge and then feeding it back through into new projects or new people that it becomes usefully managed and more value. And in a company and a society that's always on the lookout for improvement and continuous development, it's only that feedback loop to projects of the future where we actually capitalize and realize the value of the knowledge that we acquire. So how do we do that? So on the people side of things, the term 3 degrees of separation is often thrown about in the sense that if you can reach someone within 3 calls or or 3 points of contact, generally systems knit together. And that's easy when everyone knows each other, but harder as we've grown. And Arup has obviously grown substantially over the years. Dominique touched on the different skills networks we have, one of those being the structural skills networks. And this slide is showing that we're a little over 1,500 active members of that community or network. So 2 systems that we have internally to try and encourage linkage between people. One is very much focused on metrics and predefined skills. That's the image in the foreground. That's a skills database where we have classified the types of skills and services that we find are useful, and people then have a score against those. And the point of that is to then be able to find the people to have the conversation with. The other screenshot is what we call our people pages. And these are more free text page, but actually also augmented with details from projects. And collectively, these allow a great way of searching and finding individuals who are worth connecting with, who are likely through their project experience or through their rated skills have the type of information that might be worth initiating a conversation. But ultimately, the conversation is actually the key part. And the trusty old telephone or Teams or whatever we use these days is really the key that, in my experience, none of these systems remove the need for actually just talking to people and discussing problems and sharing how we find solutions. And with that, sorry, I'm just going to try and hide my toolbars. With that need or desire for connectivity, I thought worth touching on our organisational structure. Degrees of separation and wanting people to connect relies on empowering members to be free to make those connections without hierarchical constraints, blocking free and effortless conversation. Arup has for a long time had a matrix system in our organisational structure, with each of those smallest blocks on that diagram representing the teams that we all as members sit in. But key is that we have lines of leadership upwards, downwards, across ways, and then the skills networks that Dominique mentioned and what the structural skills network is then sit across that entire matrix to almost give a third dimension to it. All of that is with the intention of making it effortless that people can connect with one another, sharing knowledge, and finding the people who are most able to help them with their specific problem or need. And to further add to that is not being afraid to mix things up in this organisational chart. And actually, we've recently been through a change to it. And each time those happen, it's really a case of juggling things up and then letting the dust over people settle into a new structure. Invariably not too different to the last one, but different enough that it helps foster new connections. Talked about culture and motivations and drivers. One thing I've learned in my role in skills management is that people are motivated by different things, particularly within the structural engineering fraternity, where I think it's true to say some people are very much motivated by the arts and the creativity of our industry. Fantastic opportunity to be creative and to push the boundaries or to do something truly excellent. Others, and I don't say this in in a negative way, but they are much more motivated by almost the fear of making a mistake, and the reality that mistakes and things going wrong in structural engineering have significant consequences, and therefore driven to excel by making sure that they minimize errors. And I think whatever the driver of the individual is, it's about appreciating that to get people to put energy into sharing knowledge and collaborating, you need to touch on the things that motivate them, whatever they might be. And so going on to celebration and encouraging that sharing culture. Dominique mentioned people are typically known to be curious, but also being brave. And one of the aspects that we have really put a lot of energy into recently is being brave to acknowledge our successes, and also our weaknesses. We've always been pretty good at that, I would say. It goes right back to the early days of the Out Journal and that desire and motivation to publicly showcase our work, and equally have a collaborative and industry interlinked culture where we do things like this, where we talk openly and share our knowledge and our strengths and weaknesses. But generally speaking, I think structural engineers are quite modest people who don't see the wonderful achievements that they might deliver day in, day out, and therefore need some encouragement to talk publicly about their successes and their achievements. So encouraging that outward demonstration of the things that we think are really very good, but also making it easy for people to capture and share the lessons learned, that the mistakes that they hope would never be repeated again, or the lesser nuances of situations where it might catch people out or cause a slightly unpredicted response. And again, through we still have the Out Journal, we still have various publications, but also the internet, LinkedIn, our app.com page, various mediums to broadcast our successes. And likewise, we have internal systems like the one shown for capturing lessons learned, and also active engagement in things like structural safety on through the iStruct team. More in terms of our internal knowledge capture and share, these screenshots are just some of the different systems, platforms we have, but really showcasing the different media of knowledge that we try and share. We have routine videos sharing, a huge photo library of example images from various projects, active discussion forums where the idea is anyone can ask a technical question, receive a response, or equally just post something about something that they've learnt recently that might be just an outlet, or it might be that they're keen to see how others respond to it. Sharing tools, lots of knowledge goes into how we deliver complicated mathematical parts of engineering, and therefore with any complicated workflow, there's often a tool associated with it that automates or goes some way to automating that process, and having those shared and rated, as you can see there with the stars, so that people can find reliable systems that are trustworthy. Sketches, great way of communicating our ideas, our concepts of design, and are equally helping educate more junior staff in terms of how systems work together and what structural systems should look like or normally look like as typical details. And then the more detailed guidance often ends up needing to be written down, either procedural guidance, as the image directly above the wording written guidance there. But equally recognizing that we all don't have infinite amount of time to read, and that sometimes it's key that we condense written guidance down into short snippets of information that are easily digestible. And often also recognizing that I think engineers have quite good visual memory and often can capture or gather information more readily with the aid of images. All is not perfect, and we have ongoing challenges that we continually try and work to improve. Three of those that came to mind as I was preparing this and have been on a focus recently. One is external content and licensing. We're quite fortunate in we've got a very large access and subscriptions to various different ways of getting information from the public realm or other licensed sources. But the licensing and the disconnect between different systems means that information sometimes needs to be more energy needs to go into searching for it than if it was all in one combined system. So making sure that people are aware that the information exists and therefore know to look for it and then have easy access to it is a challenge. And I focus on external content because more often than not, it's all well and good us having internal content and knowledge. But when really trying to either push an envelope and encourage a design or a solution to be approved, we need to rely on things that are in public domain and seen as relevant good practice or best practice. The second one is on project and client IP and making sure that we are wise to keep access to our knowledge and it's not tied into contractual constraints through projects, and being savvy to our contract formulation and also the way that we develop knowledge, either on projects and accept the consequences of that, or take advantage of our own research funding and knowledge development initiatives to separate the knowledge development from the contracts. And the final one is that there's just this exponential growth of knowledge. And so going back to my earlier slide of where it's all well and good to have knowledge, but really what we want to be doing is having it applied and people having awareness of it and understanding it. With an ever increasing amount of knowledge, that challenge of having that awareness just gets harder and harder, to the point where the learning curve for newer people entering the industry is getting increasingly hard and taking more and more time. And that brings me on to my final slide of three strategies I see of knowledge management. One is that we have people who have knowledge, and those who need the knowledge ask as needed, and those that have it share it then as needed. And that's a completely passive system, simply reliant on a relatively steady work membership and people being empowered and to ask questions and have those discussions. The second one is that the people who hold knowledge more proactively share it when able, building up an increasingly large data set that is then accessed as needed or when people are able to do so, mindful of time constraints and so forth. The great thing there is that all the information is readily available, but it's incredibly inefficient because potentially it means sharing knowledge without knowing the questions that are being asked, and therefore sharing a lot of knowledge that might never be used. And the third one is recognizing the systems and then the search capability and retrieval of platforms that we have, making knowledge more open through our projects and through our ways that we can capture information in people's heads, less written notebooks and more digital notebooks, that kind of thing. Making dynamic systems that can respond to queries so that then the people needing the knowledge ask the appropriate query and access the sort of tailored knowledge suited to them. And I think that the reality is we need all three. We need certainly strategy one, that people ask as needed and that others are willing to share as needed. We have strategy two, where some of the knowledge is out there, but we don't go into strategy two to the extent that we are simply writing reams and reams of information that may never get used. And then we continually invest and develop our dynamic systems and knowledge capture, and get wise to asking more pertinent queries to retrieve the information more accurately. And I'll leave it there. So really, these are the three focuses, and keeping the balance of those is my job. Cheers.
Thank you, Andy, for this presentation. So my name is Ingrid. I'm CEO of Fry Structures. I'm just going to share my slide. There we go. So obviously, my company is actually just a lot smaller than Arup. We have 5-6 employees currently. So obviously what's happened is that we know that knowledge is critical to the to our staff and also their well-being. And we actually just think always about it as part of our overall strategy. So what we actually just need to think about is really what type of people you want to work with. Do we want to actually just tell people what to do, or do we actually just prefer for them to tell us what they're going to do, really? So it's actually just thinking about the goal rather than a list of action. Is also what type of business we want to create. Do we want to actually just support people to make the correct decision or to make a decision and for us to have a discussions about that decision? Or do we actually just always check their work and what they're doing? So again, and then it's actually just what style of management we want to use, and do we actually just provide support? Or again, do we actually just tell people what we want to do, what we want them to do? And it's also just within the knowledge, it's also understanding. We always talk about the scaffolding method. So there are some things that people can do alone, and because they are competent in doing it, and they actually just done it, and they've got the experience of doing it, which is brilliant. There are some things that they can do with help and support, from a mentor or from somebody who's actually just really done the things before. But there are some other things which are a little bit out of reach. And as you're progressing within the career, this is actually just becoming that period, the things which is out of reach zone is actually just becoming smaller and smaller as time experience builds within the person. So it's really important to understand that as well, really, and to be able to place. So we think about this carefully when we place certain people on certain project. And we actually just when we actually just look at those people, we're actually starting to think about what can they do alone? What do they need to have some help with? And is that something that they can do? Or do they need to actually somebody to actually just come with them and actually just for them to do it together, basically? Or, so we actually just making sure this out of reach zone is actually just treated as well, really. There is one thing that I've thought was useful as well, really, and it's especially for leaders, is really just thinking about our style of leadership. And it's something that I've been on a journey as well, really, with that. And I always find it really interesting to think back about how I was managed and how I want to manage people. And I did find this talk by David Marquet very useful. It's actually just really talking about how to allow people to take control of their work, and actually just for leaders to actually just allow people, everyone within the business, to become their own leaders, really. So they actually just then have control about what they're actually just working on, but also they can actually just ask for help as and when needed. And he's really just thinking about what Market talks about, is really talking about what type of language we are using. And we have to change the language that we are using to be able to actually just allow people to grow, and actually just be able to actually just talk about what support they actually just need. And what we found is that as they're actually just progressing through this, we call it a ladder or leadership, the knowledge also is actually just increasing. So knowledge actually just play a big part as well within that. And also, so just looking back about the company strategy, is that we've got the control, we actually just kind of know what the goal is, the clarity, and it's also the competence. And again, it's actually just going back to that scaffolding method where we actually just have to people must be technically competent to make the decisions they need to make. And if the what we found is that sometimes people feel that they're in a stressful position because sometimes they're faced with something that they haven't done before, so they need a little bit of support, really. So what it means for RISE and what we are just really doing. So we've got the strategy in place. We actually just look at the wording that we're actually just using. But also there are some points that we actually stop doing or do differently, or start to do differently. And obviously this is a learning process as well, which is my learning process. So I'm very happy to share it with you, but I am within that journey as well. So some things work for us, but obviously might not work, for on other people or on other practices. So what we found is that project review became quite difficult to do. So we actually just kind of started satisfying rather than checking. So basically what we do is that at each stages, we actually just it is very similar to we do project review, but it's not part of the checking process. We actually just it is a part of our process to certify, some or part of the work. We never wait until the work is finished before we do the certification. We actually just do it, at 50, 70, 80% basically of the project phase. So it's an ongoing thing. We stop using a right or wrong as a terminology. I think that people, when we say, oh, this is wrong, is actually just putting stress on people to get things right the first time, which I think is an unachievable goal. So I think that it's actually just more having a discussion about, well, I've noticed this, can we talk about it? Is that something that you can do? Can I leave it to you, or do you need some help? And this is actually just the questions, really, so they're actually just open and actually just allow conversations with people. We do have to learn from our own mistakes. That's really important. It's quite interesting because I think that on the smaller firms, we tend to concentrate on positive and negative feedback. And I'm not entirely sure that they work, actually. I think that when we actually just have something that we need to deal with, we just have to deal with it. And then it's actually just really looking at the thinking process behind it, and actually just saying, well, okay, is that a knowledge that person should have, should actually just look at. Is that a knowledge that we should have had as a business and actually just didn't have, and that's why we actually just kind of arrive at the outcome that we have. Is it part of the process where actually just our processes are lacking, and we actually just have to just put a new process in place so that next time somebody else within the business is actually just faced with the same challenges, they can then actually just have a different outcome, and that's quite important as well. We always talk about driving for excellence, and obviously we look at mistakes, but that's just not enough. So what we also do is that when we just look at new projects and we're thinking about who's going to be working on that project, we also look at who's becoming very efficient in doing, for example, using a particular program or having a different technique potentially, and actually just kind of looking at how we can actually share that within the business. What we also find is that within a small practice as well, design review, project review, and personal review become all in one. And what we actually just find easier to share that knowledge is to split them into 3 different categories. And actually what we did is to split them with different people as well. There are some overlaps and they actually just talk to each other, which is quite critical. But obviously there are actually just some design reviews as well that they actually just, so what we actually just do with the design review, which is actually just looking at aptitude and knowledge, is actually just carried out by a technical leader. And it doesn't have to be the project manager or the manager of that person, really. It's actually just somebody. So we had a technical manager who's actually just kind of dealing with those design review. And really those are actually just looking at where that person is within that design process, and what do they, what they need to do to get to the next level, really. How do we actually just get to a point where we can actually just send out the information to the client? And actually, as long as the information is not sent out, we say just like there is no right or wrong, really. It's just part of the process that we actually do. And the one thing that we actually stop doing is we actually just we don't wait until the end of the design to do that review. What we do is, as I said earlier, we do 50 and 75%, but we never, obviously we will do a review as well before we send the information out. But what we actually just found is that if we wait until then, it doesn't give us enough time to really look at the design itself, or actually just make the changes that we need to do, or provide the support that we need to provide. The project review is more about time management, and actually what we found as well is that when time starts to slip on a particular project, is very often because people have a gap within their knowledge and actually just not asking for help. So it's really important that this project review, in a sense, is only about time management, and it's actually just looking at the time allocated for each of the particular task, and actually just having this open conversation to say, well, okay, have you done it before? Do you have the knowledge? Do you need the support? And this is somebody who's actually just a project manager, who is actually just my office manager as well, really. So she doesn't have a technical knowledge. She doesn't have, she's not even an engineer, actually. So that actually just allows engineer to open up a little bit more and to say, well, actually, I need some support, and can we actually just put some time with Ingrid or somebody else, basically. So that's quite important. And then we have the personal review, which is really looking at the attitude, but also aptitude as well. And very often it's just like, so we do that monthly, which is quite interesting because I think that most people tend to just do that quarterly or every 6 months. If everything okay, they can actually just jump from 1 month to the other. But that person is the outside company that we're using. And what they're just kind of becoming is that they're becoming a mentor really to everyone, which is really interesting. And out of that as well is that it's creating this safe environment where people, if they actually just feel that they need some support, some technical support of knowledge from other person, they can actually just say it. And then it gets actually just kind of been put back basically to me, and we actually just kind of, and actually what they're doing is, and they're having discussions about how best to generate that new knowledge. Is it something that they actually just need to go into training? Do they actually just need to do learning? Is that a work-based learning? So in that case, they need to have the time. So again, it's actually just really creating. So by creating those 3 different areas, we're creating different feedback where people can actually just ask for support, but also they can actually just, just share their knowledge as well, really. The other thing that we do is we do a SWOT analysis. We tend to do that every 6 or 7 weeks. It tends to actually just be quite quick analysis of where we, what people find. So in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I think it was quite interesting, and this is a little bit what Andy was saying earlier, is that actually people, engineers, especially engineers, have a tendency to look at the negative. So we always have quite a lot of weaknesses and threats, but very little in terms of strength and opportunities. So I just shared a few typical ones, basically, that we actually had recently. And it's actually just so with the things with the SWOT analysis is that, again, we've got part of the knowledge, but also part of the of processes as well, really. So this is where, again, as a smaller businesses, things are a little bit overlapping as well, really. But what's really important is also when we actually just look at weaknesses and threats, we actually just kind of look at it and to say, well, okay, is that something that we need to increase our awareness of? Is that a process that we need to review, or is it a process that we need to create? Is it a template that we need to create? And this is, again, creating this openness within the business. And there are 2 rules basically to that meeting. One is that is completely open and there is no judgment. So I tend to take part of it because sometimes I just want to drive it a little bit more. But same things, just like sometimes I actually just not, I'm not part of it really, because I really want to create this place. I think that with the small businesses, when you are the CEO of the business, people tend to actually just have this fear of saying the wrong thing, basically. So what I found is that when I'm not part of those meetings, it creates a little bit of more of a relaxed environment. And then one of the things, so just like a little slide, but I won't go into it, is just learning how to deal with stress as well. Same thing with small businesses. This tend to just come through quite a bit. And then lastly, what we actually do as well as part of CPD is to actually just all external CPD. So we always accept for people to go to external CPD. And then what they actually just tend to do is to do an internal CPD as well. So they can actually just share that new knowledge with everybody else within the company. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.